We come from the punk rock background, so we just like to play.
How did you get into that in the first place?
Well, I mean, it was England was a very bleak and grey place in the 70s. We had Margaret Thatcher as the Prime Minister, the miners' strike, and all this stuff was going on. And then, we would be watching TV. David Bowie would be on, Roxy Music, Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, this sort of stuff. But we never would play that music. We weren't musicians really in that sense. But as soon as punk rock hit, which was amazing, in about 1976, 77, the Pistols, the Clash, all these bands started appearing. And quite a lot of the British youth just said, we could do that. So let's do it because we want to do something. And that's what happened. Hundreds and hundreds of bands formed: The Cure, Joy Division, Modern English, Gang of Four, you name it, Echo and the Bunnymen. There's so many of them that formed around that time. That's how Modern English got into music.
What did starting a band and getting into punk music give you?
The working class kids, which I was one of, didn't have many routes out of just a 9 to 5 job. There wasn't many routes. There was sports, obviously, and the creative arts as well. They were really the only ones. And for us, the punk rock thing, it just gave us a creative outlet, which we'd never had before. We'd maybe had it in us, but we didn't know what to do with it because we weren't given opportunities. But as soon as punk rock came along, that changed the landscape of music in Britain. I mean, overnight, all the old bands got thrown off the front of the magazines and the newspapers, and all the new bands got put on there. So we were very happy to be part of that.
How come it took off like it did just overnight?
Because it was a working class anti-establishment movement. It was like, I don't know, the equivalent of, Teddy Boys, in the 60s, 50s or whatever. Everyone was wearing a certain uniform. Everyone felt part of something that was like rebellious and youthful. I mean, it's a shame you don't see it anymore. Everyone that these days is so comfortable, they don't have to worry about anything. But back then, it wasn't like that. I mean, we didn't have any money. I used to steal equipment to go and play concerts. My microphone was stolen from a DJ, the first microphone I had. Our guitar was like 30 quid from Woolworths. I
Right,
mean,
right.
that's the way it all happened. And it wasn't just us, it was all the bands at the time doing the same thing. And we kind of learned our trade as we went along through the first album, Mesh and Lace, the first singles on 4AD, Swans on Glass. They're all very noisy and edgy as we're learning to play. Because when you don't know exactly what you're doing, you tend to use effects quite a lot, which is, foot pedals for guitarists and sways of sound from keyboard players, and I just shout my head off generally because it was easiest. That's how we kind of got going, really. We quickly turned into modern English. We added keyboards. The scene was changing as punk rock became a bit, dull, really. All the bands started experimenting with sounds, and bands like Joy Division and Wire and The Cure were becoming a bit more melancholic, and that's really our time post-punk, which would be 1979 to about 84.
If punk rock exploded in the mid to late 70s, how come it became dull such a short time later?
Well, it was such an exciting. It was like a flame that flickered really brightly but quickly. Like it was just over before it started in some ways. The Pistols and the Clash were the main two bands really, and the Damned were there as well, and there was a few others, but it just didn't last long. It was a furious couple of years for music in terms of the energy in the crowds, the energy from the bands, but that couldn't go on forever.
Huh.
Then it became more musical.
Why had you called yourself the Lepers?
I don't know. We didn't know what we were doing. We just were a punk band. It seemed like a good punk name.
And then how did it transition into the name Modern English?
Well, we started making the music was different. It became more abstract, more arty, more creative. The lyrics became more metaphoric and all this stuff. We just grew as a band, and we couldn't keep the name. It just didn't mean anything to us anymore. And it was the drummer, actually, Richard Brown, who just said, modern English, we're very modern, we were at the time, and we're English. So we went for it. But I mean, we were just, young and excited about everything. You have to work hard in music. You don't just give up. If you want to get something out of it, we were just happy to get the first single, Drowning Man, it was called. Just a really exciting time for us and for lots of other bands. It was signing to 4AD that changed everything. When we signed to 4AD, we were in good company there with the Cocteau Twins, Nick Cave. So it was just a really exciting time. But it was only when we got a producer to do After the Snow, which is the big album, I Melt With You, and the Valley Girl thing, the film. I mean, that's when it all took off for us. That's when we started becoming a professional band, really.
How did you manage to score that deal with the movie?
Well, we didn't even know we were doing 80 concerts in 100 days in America on a bus. We were just going around America, and the management would put us out, and we'd go around the country and come back to the start. And we were getting so popular, they just stuck us out there again. And we were selling out all these shows going around the country. And then one day they pulled the bus over by the side of the road and said, "Have a look at this." Stuck a VHS in the TV. Remember then?
Yeah.
And on came Valley Girl, and it had, Melt With You was in the film 3 times, I think. It was like a massive portion of the movie, all the way through from the beginning to the end. They played the song. We still get all that now. We've got I think it's in America right now. We've got a Hershey bar advert which is using our song. There's like 900 versions of Melt With You on YouTube if you want to look it up. There's harp players on there playing it. There's choirs. Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing that song has got a life of its own, really.
Tell us a little bit about the genesis of that song.
The lyrics were written in like a few minutes in Shepherd's Bush in London. We were all living in the same house, the band. And then I just wrote all this stuff down, like stream of consciousness, stuff. And then we went to the rehearsal room and started jamming around, and I just had the lyrics to go with it. And it just became this enormous song. For us, it was just another song on the album. We weren't used to making commercial music. So for us, we were a bit wary of it, because it was so commercial sounding. The producer, Hugh Jones, just said, "Don't be stupid." We always want to put something in there that sort of edges it up a bit or makes it different. Like even I Melt With You, it's quite a dark lyric on a pop song. It's not a straightforward, happy lyric, really.
And how did American audiences take to you then?
That was hilarious. They just loved us straight away. It was really weird. We weren't used to it. We were used to like playing ICA, underground art clubs, university gigs, not massive crowds. The first big concert we did in America was in Daytona Beach. They call it spring break, which is like the holiday, in spring. And we played to like 10,000 people. It was unbelievable. And they all sang the words back to us. I mean, we got off the plane wearing long coats. That's how little we knew about America.
I mean, it surprises me, though, that they had gone for you in such a big way. No offence. That hadn't been their kind of music at all till then.
No, and MTV took it to everybody. The videos that were made, we did a really cheap video for I Melt With You. Didn't cost much. We carried all the props in ourselves, and it was I think one of the first or second biggest videos when MTV started, and that was a massive influence on the American youth who were all looking for stuff as well. Their mums and dads were listening to Crosby, Stills and Nash, and all those bands, which are great bands. Don't get me wrong, but they wanted their own stuff. The British Invasion, they've always liked the Beatles and the Stones, and so it was like they called it the second British Invasion. All the bands coming over, and it worked. All the bands got very popular.
So you must have been incredibly surprised by the reaction and by just the volume of people that you were then playing to, because of course the audience there is so much greater than in the UK.
Yeah, and it's very different. But the personalities, the people are much more, cheering and showing their emotions and jumping up and down. And whereas in England, they're more likely to just sort of look at you and stare and give you a round of applause. It's just a different thing completely. I don't know what the Australian people are like, because I've never been there.
Oh, well, but, you're coming. I think you'll find us somewhere in between both.
What we'll probably do is do a cross-section. We'll be doing some of our noisiest stuff from the early days, 16 Days, Swans on Glass, Gathering Dust, and then we'll swiftly move into the more pop stuff. After the Snow will be in there. Then we'll get, obviously Melt With You and Hands Across the Sea, and a couple of the new songs like Long in the Tooth, Not My Leader. And by the time that's done, that'll be the end of it. Can't wait to get to Australian New Zealand. I'm really looking forward to just checking out the culture, really, more than anything.
I thank you so very much for your time today. We're very excited here to see Modern English. And congratulations on your journey and your persistence and your passion.
Thank you. Cheers.
See you over here.
Bye
Travel
bye.
safely, Robbie. Bye now.
Bye bye.